A touring enduro bike on steroids. How does the MV Agusta Enduro bike Veloce ride? All the info in this 1000 PS video. Yes, this is a touring enduro bike. Take a look at it. This color scheme, these lines, elegant, cool. I mean, it can't quite keep up with bikes like the Super Veloce or the legendary F4, but compared to other touring enduro bikes, you can see that this is a real MV Agusta. A beautifully drawn machine with a lot of nice details where they've done it with a bit of dedication. And let's start with a walk around. I made a walk around for you to show you the beautiful elements. I suddenly thought we'd do a walk around the MV Agusta Enduro Veloce and take a look at the beautiful parts. Well, the first thing that catches the eye are the beautiful lacquer elements that have been used here and that different colors have been incorporated into one element. It's relatively complex to do it this way. You hardly ever find this in mass-produced products because this transition here, this line, is virtually handmade, which doesn't look like a standard product. It's a simple part like this handguard. I think it's very beautifully detailed. Yes, you also rarely see aerodynamic elements like this on touring enduros. Windscreen is not adjustable, and in terms of volume, I would say acceptable, okay? I think it's beautifully designed, but it's certainly the case that compared to, I don't know, a Super Veloce now visually, but because of the adventure bike segment, you don't want to lick it like you would a Super Veloce. But in the league of touring enduros, it's certainly one of the nicer ones. Bench seat here with a raw application, also with dual coloring. What else is important? Also a small detail. You have this bracket here where you can mount a sat nav afterwards with a rinded strut. Also a nice detail. For example, some weight-saving elements have been milled out of the frame. It's also a bit of a gimmick in the details. Of course, which is already clear for a carburetor, you have a high-quality looking, beautiful aluminum swing arm here. What you shouldn't underestimate is that these XL rims, the tubeless version, are relatively expensive. It's nice that they're included. The suspension works well, but is not electronically adjustable. But I'll get to the suspension later, don't worry. And here, the area where the engine can be seen a bit, I think it has a good balance of plastic and free elements where you can also see something of the bike. I think that's a good mix. I try to make sure that I can see into the cylinder head somewhere. So you can see a bit of the beautiful red cylinder head there. It's a very nice detail. What else do we have? What else have I discovered? Exhaust is standard. Yes, otherwise the rear frame is bolted on. I think many of you will be pleased with that, or at least the traveling tourists will be. Yes, otherwise I think that's it with the nice details. I hope you've now been able to get a bit of an impression of the enduro bike Veloce, of the elements. Yes, but when I was moderating, I said that it was traveling on steroids. So I'd like to start with a small engine because that's certainly the element on the bike. Alongside the design that makes the bike so special. And it's like this, it's a 3-cylinder 936 engine, 124 horsepower, and it's a 3-cylinder engine, which is what we've always been promised. A 3-cylinder engine says I'm the best of both worlds, and the thing is you always have more rev reserves at high RPMs than you'd like. so you don't get into the limiter, so to speak, because you're already unconscious because of the length of the arms, but you have breathtakingly good response behavior. And I have to emphasize right away that I'm not one of those exotic lovers who somehow glosses over it because I want to protect this high-end forge, but I rate it just like a mass-produced product where 10,000 of them are made. Incidentally, around 1,000 of these machines will be produced in the first year. So the response behavior is breathtakingly good. I didn't believe they could manage it like that. No play in the throttle grip, or very, very little play, just as you need it. It responds incredibly well, incredibly precisely, and this engine can be controlled very precisely. And then inside you have this reviness in combination with this infernal sound. I think you see it on a racing motorbike, and it really gives you goosebumps. And I'm sure that people who value a great sound with this bike, yes, how can I put it, so they'll have moments of happiness in the saddle there if they like this sporty, aggressive sound. But it's not unpleasant now. It's not that it's very loud, but it's really well made, and there's also this smooth system in the rear exhaust track behind it. But back to the engine. Great response, great turning ability, and now you have the situation that the front engine also has this counter-rotating crankshaft in it, and this counter-rotating crankshaft cancels out the gyroscopic forces of the front wheel a little, or not a little, but it cancels them out a little. The crankshaft has a higher rotational speed, but a smaller radius. So using clever maths, even the large rotation of the 21-inch front wheel is balanced out to some extent if you equalize it a little. And now you've got this combination of revy, cool to modulate engine with this heavenly nimbleness in a 21-inch chassis, and it feels good. And what feels even better, what is even more fascinating, is the fact that when you are in the bends and make corrections on the throttle grip or put the throttle on or let it off, these changes in revs have no influence on the line, but that it holds the track very precisely. And you don't really get this kind of riding performance from touring enduros. So that's absolutely fantastic, and you can go into advertising and communication with a proud chest. So this is a touring enduro bike on steroids that can ride really fast and sporty, and they keep all their promises. That fits perfectly. And then it's like, I'll sit on it and you can see the knee angle. It's like this, you sit very much integrated into the bike. I'm 1.85 meters tall, and for me personally the knee angle is a bit too sharp, I would say, so I would have liked a higher seat. But this configuration makes the bike accessible to more compact riders in terms of riding comfort, and it will probably have been the right decision overall. But people who like to sit on a bike like this at high RPMs and like flat lines will probably not like it. And now I've already gone deep into the subject of ergonomics. There are a few surprises, or one major surprise, and the one major surprise is that you can ride the bike incredibly well standing up. I wouldn't have believed that because it feels so bulky visually, because it's more dominant than a big tank and you have this low seat. But as soon as you stand at high RPMs on the bike, it's surprisingly slim in the area of the edge and knees. So you can ride comfortably standing up, have a good grip on the handlebars, can control the throttle well, and can glide precisely through off-road terrain. Fits really wonderfully. You don't have an adjustable windscreen. The windscreen is static, just like all the other aerodynamic elements. It's well made, but if you grow over that edge, so I'm 6'1", for me, I would have liked it to be a bit higher. So I did have that tear-off edge on my helmet, and at higher speeds, at 140, 150, it was quite uncomfortable in the saddle, but at lower speeds it was fine. Smaller riders have said that they had very, very good wind protection. Yes, and Heizung fort mais. I would also include the issue of riding comfort and stability. You have a great feeling in the saddle on faster sections. It's stoically calm, and that's fascinating because on the other hand, you have this fascinating handling in the tight corners. You obviously have a very successful chassis geometry combined with very good aerodynamics, and this results in a very, very precise, stable riding performance in fast sections. That also worked wonderfully. Come on, what criticisms do I have? Do I build it in the middle or do I have to do it at the end? There are such areas, and above all, when you consider the price of the bike, you have a certain expectation. You have a certain expectation. Now you are at a price that is in the absolute top league of touring enduros, but there are features that are missing compared to other top class touring enduros. So you don't have electronic suspension here. No bad word about the suspension. Works well, but it's a fully adjustable mechanical suspension, very high quality, but you have to remove a spanner when you switch back and forth between off-road and road. That's just the way it is. it is what it is. You don't have heated grips as standard, otherwise full electronic equipment, which aggressive riders might notice when riding. The lack of an anti-hopping clutch, which means that if you downshift and brake very aggressively, you have the problem that the rear wheel starts to stamp. You probably wouldn't expect that on a bike in this price range. And then there's the fact that when it comes to the electronics, I've tended to have the maintenance attitude that the engine response behavior isn't perfect. The only thing where this exotic issue was a little bit present was not the starting behavior, but the acceleration behavior. So when the bike starts, you have to press the button briefly. You have to have a bit of patience until the bike comes to life, the whole thing comes to life, and you shouldn't finger it in between, otherwise you can get error messages. That happened to me once. Where you also have to be careful is if you leave the bike standing for a lengthy period and the battery is virtually dying and the battery voltage is then low, then there is also the problem that you then get error messages from various sensors when you start and then you have to restart again. That was a bit annoying. It's also something you're probably not used to in this price range. Otherwise, I have to say, the bike gives the impression of a very, very mature product. That's funny. I've ridden Italian exotics in the past, this brand too, and that took a lot of love. And now I'm the exotic lover. For me, it just has to work perfectly technically, but they benefit in this area from the fact that KTM forced a test procedure on them when they started out, and they then somehow rode the bike 10,000 kilometers in California. KTM has a base in North America and somehow drove 10,000 off-road kilometers. And somehow it made a good impression. And of course, I looked at all the test engines there. It all fits well. It has hands and feet. It's mechanical. And this whole story is a very mature story and has fitted wonderfully. What did I notice? There's one thing I have to say, because otherwise it doesn't fit in with the sporty character. That surprised me. We were traveling relatively fast, I have to say. You had 46 degrees of lean angle on the right and 44 degrees of lean angle on the left. Of course, you know that because of the 6-axis angle, which now plays into the display. And that's where we really sent it, and it was great, all wonderful. This handling, the throttle response behavior. You get a real rush in the saddle simply because this engine gives you a real zest for life, and it's safe, a bike where you're more unreasonable on the road than you would normally be. I'm already a more sedate type and don't normally allow myself to be so tempted, but I went over the top again today. That was pretty intense, but everything fits when you accelerate, everything. And when it comes to braking, if you anchor aggressively or go into the brakes very hastily, then you have the challenge that the ABS doesn't deliver that level of sportiness that other elements of the bike do. You some who now have too high expectations of this acceleration ABS. This is then not completely fulfilled if you have the ABS as a pain in the ass at the start. Yes, I guess that 98% of you don't care at all. But I just want to say it for the throttle lever or for the brake lever, so that they don't say that NastyNils has somehow praised it. Where I don't know exactly is who is going to jump on the bike now. I have to be honest, is it Agusta riders who are now saying, finally a bike that is really comfortable to ride, where I can ride long distances and 21 inches irons out all the bumps in the tarmac and gravel roads anyway? And are they those people? Or is it riders of other touring enduro bikes, brands that are somehow looking for that special flavor? I wouldn't dare to say, but if I have to make a very harsh judgment now and tell you very harshly, if you evaluate this bike pragmatically, of course, with a points list, at the end of the day, the price remains a problem in addition to the points you add up at the bottom, because it can do things very well. And I say this combination of acceleration, engine feeling, handling, precision, top. So it's right up there at the top. But there are a few shortcomings which I mentioned before, ABS and all the bells and whistles and individual equipment elements, where I say, okay, pragmatically speaking, you can get a bike elsewhere for a lower price that scores more points overall. That's just the way it is. On the other hand, people who have always loved or love the MV Agusta brand and appreciate it and were afraid, well, who knows if that's something? Well, I can give them some advice. A mature product, a good product, a product that comes with a 4-year warranty, which can now build on a stable, reputable dealer network, because KTM, as the majority owner, is developing it well, but still has a 100% Italian soul. So it's developed in Italy, built in Italy. The KTM people are somehow process optimizers in sales structures and so on. But otherwise, it has Italian lifeblood in it, a real MV Agusta. Quite different from other modular things like KTM has done with Husqvarna, it has to be said. So this is a real MV Agusta, you could say that. And of course, that's good news for fans of the brand who are now saying, okay, now I can buy a bike that 1,000 people will ride, so I can produce 1,000 of them in the first year. And I have the reliability of a large corporation behind me, and it probably won't go bankrupt next year either. It's probably not going to happen. That's certainly a good story. I have a video file for you where we take a closer look at the operation. We can play that now. So I'll try to show you how to operate the bike again. It's relatively windy. Maybe it will work. I hope so. Let's bring it to life. And as you can see, you need patience now. It's a process that takes a bit of time, and some people then fiddle around nervously, press again, and then mess them up. But if you're patient and it comes to life, from that moment on, it's really 100% there and doesn't mess around. We basically have a two-part universe. Left conditions, right conditions. I don't do everything now, but the most important things, that's the most important button, you can't underestimate it, is the start button. And in operation, when you're running fair in the engine, you can change the basic mode here. You can see it here. In other words, I switch from touring to urban mode to off-road mode at high RPMs. That's quite a special feature. You have to pay attention to it. What you also have here is the launch control, so to speak. Thus, the launch control button isn't a bad thing, because if you activate it, you can use it to measure the acceleration from 0 to 100. I've included an onboard shock mount for you. Otherwise, you operate, still forgotten, long press here on the ABS button, deactivated ABS in addition to the normal off-road ABS. This means that if I now switch to off-road mode here via this mode button, I can also deactivate the ABS, but completely. Otherwise, it is relatively easy to select these areas via this switch unit. I can press up and down and can then scroll up and down here at that moment, and also scroll red in this slide. Or if I move left and right here, I can access the individual areas here, left and right. Yes, nice gimmick. Here you can see the data tick marks from the IMU, yes. Or fine tune the traction control, yes. This is the confirmation button, so to speak. This is where you enter the menu. I could now fine tune the traction control. As far as the, yes, I can switch on cruise control here, plus and minus here, yes. All easy peasy. Apart from that, I don't want to bother you with the details. What I will show you is the seat. You can take it off and then loosen it at 3 screw points and 3 screw points on the seat, turn it round and then put it on again. And then the seat is in a lower position. Now it's in the height position. You can see it there. That's a lower position when they slide down. And I have to say, for me, 1.85 meters, even in the high position, the knee angle is a bit too acute. And so, yes. I hope I've covered a lot of aspects now. I'd like to talk very briefly about the components. They have very high quality rims. They have the Brembo Stelema on them. They have a Sachs suspension on them, which I really liked, and has a very wide adjustment range. So you wouldn't believe it's the same suspension. So when you put the suspension down for the road, it's very firm. You hardly have any dive. When trail braking, buying is tight brake, so that's amazing how firm it is. Despite this high suspension travel, 230 millimeters suspension travel, 10 millimeters ground clearance or vice versa, shit. But high travel, lots of ground clearance. Sorry for the sponginess. I've written the relevant data at the bottom of the report, and it's all correct to the letter. But you have high travel, brakes hard, hardly any dive in and corner exit. It hardly sinks at the rear with a top firm sports suspension. It's great how they get it right, and then you screw it on. You can screw it on forever, because it also has preload and a really wide adjustment range. Then it's smooth and buttery and wonderful, really great, really great. Still, there are bikes that are more accessible off-road, even if they don't have as good a suspension as those. I think that's a conceptual weakness of the 3-cylinder engine. You have this fantastic reviness and this great responsiveness, which you really enjoy on the road, but off-road you have the challenge that there might not be enough flywheel mass, or this doughy sluggishness would be desirable. But if it's a bike that loses grip off-road, it's quite difficult to find the grip again, because the engine revs so euphorically at high RPM. In other words, you can ride it off-road, everything is fine, but it's probably more for people who are a bit better at it and nowhere near as accessible as a 2-cylinder chugging along. I have to say, off-road. Yes, that's my assessment of the vehicle. MV Agusta still offers accessory programs right from the start with all the things you need. I mentioned the unbelievably fat tailstock system and the 4-year warranty. So it was an interesting experience here in Sardinia, and I hope I was able to, how should I put it, arouse some interest in the topic, and you are welcome to post your opinions below about discussions, especially here. And of course, the most important thing is that the people who buy them and gain intensive experience, it could also be in a year, in 2 years, when the video is already older, post your experiences below. That's very important to me. Thanks for watching. Goodbye and see you next time on 1000 PS TV.